Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lunch and Look for the new main gallery exhibition at the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba, titled Criptych. My name is Lucy Letterhandler. I'm the curator here, and we are trying a new hybrid format today, online, but with our doors open. So before we begin this artist-led tour, let's all pause for a moment of reflection and acknowledgement that everything that we perform here on Turtle Island is about the Indigenous people of this land. So I honor the Dene, Dakota, Cree, Oji-Cree, Anishinaabe peoples and their ancestors, as well as the Métis Nation on whose homeland this exhibition was built. When I speak a land acknowledgement, I do so to reinforce that reality to myself and to invite consideration as we proceed now. So we'll remember the history of these territories as we assemble today, talking around questions of access, connectedness, and intersectionality. Let us begin. I'll remind everybody who is joining us online that you can ask the artist questions directly in the comments section. We do have a couple intrepid in-person people, so they can follow us on the tour with their own bodies. I'm going to bring you to this area of the exhibition and introduce our first artist, Susan Abbott. Susan Aydan Abbott creates deeply personal works using photography, sculpture, film, and installations which speak to memory, resilience, trauma, violence, and survival. She uses silicone casts of her body and face to link architecture and landscape with her own personal history as she directly transfers the pain of her experiences and into her own environment. Abbott has exhibited locally and nationally and attended residencies in Hamilton, Ontario, Feminist Art Collective in Toronto, Ontario. Her work was spotlighted on Canada Council's website in 2018. She has received numerous grants to complete a body of work on the subject of an abandoned mental asylum called Booby Hatch, Womanifesto, A Feminine Perspective of Century Manor. So welcome, Susan. Why don't you give us a tour of SAL?
Of course I'm first. I don't know what to do. Do I go over there?
Yeah, present.
Okay.
Oh, no, stay where you are and describe the process of SAL, of creating SAL for us.
I started, I have a deep dive kind of into different trauma that still affects me and that I've never really talked about. So she began when I was thinking about my experience with electric shock therapy when I was 6 months pregnant with, I guess she must be my 5th child. And when we were doing the residency and stuff like that, I just started thinking harder about that and looking up different words or quotes. And then I somehow ran into something about pigs and how ECT was first created to subdue pigs for slaughter. So I went and got a pig head and did a silicone cast of a pig head. and then played around with that, and then I started just playing around with I wanted to incorporate the pig with myself, so I got hoofs too that I also cast in silicone, and then I cast my hands holding the hoofs, and then the pig's head, Piggy, I put my own eyes in her and also my smile, and then I just started thinking about I wanted it to be loud and really get people, I don't know, uncomfortable, because that's my work. I like to make people uncomfortable or get some kind of guttural, visceral reaction. So then I thought I'd start playing with maybe projecting stuff. So I filmed myself with the pig head in a hospital gown, 40 below last winter, or I guess the winter before. And so I did that, and I got my son to videotape me from above, like an aerial view of myself in the snow. And then I wanted some noise and loudness, as I say. I want to kind of make it almost in my nightmare of how it affected me. So I got sound things of pig squealing and a fetal heartbeat, and just zapping of the current, hopefully. So it's all immersive. It's, as I say, I'm very proud of it, but feel very, very, very vulnerable with her because she is me. And I hope people I'm just hoping people, whatever reaction, love it or hate it, that I get some type of reaction. Is that okay? I'm not a talker.
So now we're going to continue through the gallery. This is Susan Abbott's room. Now we're going to Susan Lambert, who is a multidisciplinary artist interested in challenging the preconceived notions of what an artist with a disability can create. She positions the body as the central theme of her work. Diverse medias communicate ideas of success in the arts, reject the view of disability that conventional artists have maintained, and aid in discovering radical new ways in which to express these beliefs. So welcome, Susan. Thanks for being here.
You too.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how your work came to be?
Well, I've been an artist since I was a teenager, but I was diagnosed with MS when I was around 21. And ever since, I've been very interested in the body and disability, and realized later on that there was a genre of art called disability art, and started using my art creatively as a form of disability art. I've loved to focus on the body especially and what's inside, realizing that there's a lot of material in the body to focus on for my art. And when I was in this mentorship, I had actually, for the year before the mentorship, had been given a Canada Council for the Arts grant to produce some work for this MS project. And I had already started with the masks, which are behind me, and had started working on the plaster masks, which I had produced around over 50 of them. And they're all unique. They're all cast with a silicone-based negative, and then the positive is made with the plaster. And they're all basically supposed to mean that I'm trying to say something and no one's listening, especially the medical community. I was also working on, I had made about 50 of those. I was also working on the MRI prints that Lucy is going towards. I had obtained about 1,200 copies of my MRIs throughout the years from 2009 to 2016 from the Health Science Center that they had taken for my progression of my MS. And I used some of those copies of the MRIs to print on acetate. And then I used those printed copies to sew with yarn on plaques that I imagined would look like on my brain. So these are printed copies of my brain with what I think the plaques would look like on my brain. And the axons that are coming out of the plaques that are damaged from the MS. There's approximately 20 on each IB pole, each of the 2 IB poles. So those were the beginning of the project. I also was given, for the grant from Canada Council, I was also given money for the glass brain, which is made out of neon tubes. And it has a pump underneath, pump mechanism, like a fountain or a water pump. And it's pumping water and oil paint through it, oil paint and canola oil, actually. And it's meant to signify the brain and the clots and the illness that's going through my brain and just the garbage that's happening inside. That's what it's meant to signify, and it is quite interesting just to look at it. The video pool residency that I had was media arts residency with the other 3 artists here. And so I was given the opportunity to incorporate some digital arts media in my project. And this is where this rendering of MRI became possible. And I was able to take the MRI copy that I had on a digital form from the Health Science Center, and I used a program called Osiris, which was a free copy on the internet, and I just kept on 30 days. I just kept on renewing this free copy and trying to figure out how to use it to render the digital copy of the MRI so I could make it into a brain-like thing. That's my head actually, and it's just going kind of around in a loop. And one of the mentors in the program helped me put little words flowing out of the brain and making words into the symptoms that are caused by MS, some of which are actually symptoms that I've had in the past or I am actually experiencing right now. And so that's on a video on the wall. And the other multimedia installation that I have in this project is, what is it? I can't see. Oh yeah, the projection mapping. And so this is a big, huge piece of elm wood, which I had, solid piece of elm wood that I had hollowed out. So if the projection, there's 3 projectors shining on it, and if you take the projectors off, it's just a piece of wood. But it's actually 3 projectors projection light onto it, so it looks almost like it's glowing, and it's a picture of a brain, and you can't really see it right now, but there's little people walking through the brain, trying to, almost as if going through a maze, trying to get through a maze. And it's just kind of, it signifies just the frustration and confusion and just especially the frustration that I go through trying to navigate my way through the medical system and just through life itself, with going through an invisible disability and sometimes not an invisible disability, but just life itself with MS. That's all the 5 pieces of my exhibition. Yeah.
So Susan gave us a proper series, and I should have mentioned it's under the title Disruption, Interruption.
Right, that's the title, yeah.
Which I have to think is about that blockage, right? The idea of flow stopping,
the flow,
of your life and of your brain.
Right, yeah.
And in the text that Andrea wrote for this exhibition, she talks about.
Yes, she's very, very well written, articulate. Yes, we were so happy to have Andrea write that for us. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay, speak of the devil. Meta joke. We are now approaching Andrea von Wichert.
Wichert.
Andrea von Wichert. I kept saying Wichert.
It's close.
Okay. Is another Winnipeg. Everybody's from Winnipeg, so I'm skipping that part of the bio. But is a visual artist, performer, and writer, a self-identified clown who explores objection as identity. Her work often muses on the failure to meet culturally defined expectations on a consistent and chronic basis. Known as a fearless performer and provocative writer and orator, she has performed spoken word internationally and collaborated with orchestral musicians and composers, witch doctors, and various other eccentric weirdos. She has produced independent performance and art department heavy short films and live theater. Her creative nonfiction has been published in Prairie Fire magazine and in a number of anthologies designed to rile the patriarchy. She has spent some time studying towards a Master of Arts at the Department of English, Film and Theatre at the University of Manitoba. Welcome, Andrea. Won't you walk us through your work?
Sure. It's difficult to walk through the work because it no longer exists. What wound up happening to me during a new media residency is that I was quickly drawn into a researching phase, and I realized that
I personally am not interested in any new media technology, but I was very glad to learn as to what technologies are available, because you can always hire people who actually will use those technologies to do the work that you're looking for. And so my piece is a live performance. It's called Trigger Warning Satan. And it's the second in a series of performance lectures that I've been developing since 2016. And they are, I suppose the best way to, they're a cultural critique of, first of all, the treatment and stigmatization of what we would call mental illness or psychiatric disabilities within our society. And in breaking that down, it's also a larger critique of the structural inequities and absurdities that we are imbued in this particular point of time. And specifically, I came to the Satan aspect of it was, I had originally planned to build a soundscape, and I was charting it in sort of a John Cage style score. And I created 5 lines representing each was representing a decade of my life, and then subdivided into the years. And I started charting both events from my life, but also major influential cultural events. And I realized, because part of my family were Christian fundamentalists, that the character of Satan, particularly as interpreted by 20th century Pentecostal, evangelical, Anabaptist Protestantism. And that sort of morphed into an examination of the influence of fundamentalism and its inherent need to subjugate and subdue everyone, but particularly women, through fear. And it's sort of the ramifications of having this schema introduced into my life so very early, and how extraordinarily damaging it can be. And within that, I look at a part of Manitoba history that has been covered up by the provincial government, in which there was a doctor at St. Boniface Hospital who's one of the original purveyors of, it's called Satanic ritual abuse. It was a big part of the Satanic panic in the late 1980s and 1990s. And at the time that I first developed this show, it was very timely, because the year was going to be the 35th anniversary of the most famous daycare ritual abuse cases in the United States. But the pandemic sort of pushed that out of the general zeitgeist. And now what I'm hoping is that I'm getting closer to creating an actual product. And maybe in the next year or two, depending again upon what the pandemic does, I would like to take it to the Edinburgh Festival and see where it goes from there.
Okay, well, that was great, and it was a wonderful performance. And so it'll be on loop with the audio available starting this afternoon at the gallery. Now, finally, this is so weird. It's like a Gilliam movie, you know. Everybody's just sitting plugged in. But we do have our in-person guests who we will let ask questions first before the internet. We are on our way to Yvette Cenerini, née Lambert, who is a francophone métis visual artist who has participated in group shows in Manitoba, Quebec, and Ontario, including a solo exhibition at La Maison des Artistes, Winnipeg. Her work in photo collage is characterized by the use of animal as subject. It examines the intricacies of emotion and relationships through simple aesthetic that is laden with sarcastic undertones. Having obtained both a Bachelor of Education and a Bachelor of Fine Arts, knowledge sharing in the forms of teaching, mentoring, cultural meditation, and community engagement are important facets of her practice. So Yvette, we will turn it over to you now.
Yes, okay, so just to give a little bit of background on this piece, I'm used to working in collage, and when I joined this residency, I had to start thinking about how I could use new media in a collage. And so I was thinking, what kind of imagery or images would I like to see? Would I like to bring movement to? So the first thing that came to mind is because I was also with a group of other artists with disabilities, was, well, I would really like to see my own body move because I live with paralysis. And so that's how it all began, building this paper doll-like structure. I photographed my entire body, head to toe, and then I chopped it all up and I screwed it back together so that the limbs could move. And the structure that you see with the harness is something similar that I use at home to get in and out of my wheelchair. So it's a daily occurrence for me to be using machines and electronics to help me, but also I also depend on people a lot. And so the installation is meant to be interactive. There's a remote, much like the remote that I have at home that my attendants use to lift me up and down. So the remote viewers are invited to control the movements of my limbs through the remote, moving an arm up and arms, legs going up and down, and the whole thing goes down and up as well. And so it's kind of like I'm just inviting the viewers to understand what it feels to help someone else. So to be responsible with someone else's body and someone else's life, really. I depend on people to keep me alive. And so it's kind of just a relationship, sort of a conversation between the person running the remote and myself in the as the paper doll cutout. So hopefully viewers can imagine and empathize the situation as both the caregiver and as someone needing care, because everybody needs somebody sometime. So yeah, that's and it's the first time that I've actually used my own image and my own experiences in my work. I've been an artist for 10 years, and I have in the past made illusions about disability through my work, but mostly using animals as subjects or sort of doing things indirectly. And this is the first, it's my first work in new media. It's my first work with an actual self-portrait. And so it's been very exciting and a year of growth for me to feel strong enough to put that out there. So yeah.
So that's the first tour completed. I wondered if anybody in person has any questions for the artist. No, not at this time. Let me go check. I do want to, so Yvette, your piece is called Technical Support, Satanic Technique, which is a wonderful title, very double meaning. So I forgot to mention that. It's wonderful because it's about.
And the fact is that actually when I write the description, artwork description for this piece, I include all of the artists that had a hand in also helping me take the photographs, cut everything out, screw everything together. So I have it was really like a team of me and 4 other artists who had to work together to make it happen. So.
Yeah. So I'm going to pose this to everybody, and you can raise your hand or I'll call on people. But I do want to, my impression, because I got this this residency as a package deal, and you guys really built this as a show. You engaged in this as a team. So this intense sorority that emerged in talking about these difficult issues and in finding similarities. I wanted to talk about the experience of that coming together for all of you. Why don't I start with Susan Lambert, because she was nodding as I asked.
There was a definite connection. We were expecting an even more connection with the mentors, but it just so happened that the intense connection happened with the mentees.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost as if the mentors were cut out. It's just the mentees happened to build a really intense friendship, and the mentors they understood us, but they didn't really understand us as our. They understood our artistic side, but they really didn't understand the connection that we had as a, and I'm not going to say as disability, because that doesn't define us. The disability, we're not defined by our disability, and that's not who we are. We're artists first, and then we're people. We're not defined by our disability, and sometimes I felt that, or maybe others did too, that they kind of looked at us that way, and that, you know, I sometimes other people with disabilities may feel that way too, and that's not how we feel and felt. And anyway, the friendship that came from the mentorship was a great way to continue the year and continue over after the year, and it was great. It was a wonderful way to, you know, even if the mentorship didn't work out, that was well worth it, I think.
Bringing people together, and I wonder. I'll go to Andrea, because in your writing you also called it an experiment, and I wonder if that idea of the new media was set a table for the experimental phase.
I am not sure about that, but my disability art guru is Deb Patterson, who is the artistic director of Sick and Twisted Theatre Company. And she talks a lot about the gift of the disruption of disability. Is that when you have a disability, whether it's invisible or visible, you often find yourself in a situation where your plans go awry because you have to deal with something related to your disability. And now the beautiful thing for me that fostered our relationships is that we were all in a situation where it was okay and safe to verbalize and vocalize these disruptions. And then because we were a group of working artists, we helped each other contextualize these disruptions into the source of unthought of creative potential, which I think is the greatest lesson right now that the disability arts or disabled artists can give, especially given the nature of the pandemic. And I don't know how many times I've heard people use the word pivot in the last 18 months. But really, that is the frustration, but also the beautifully joyous gift of living with a disability, is that you are forced to give up control over things that we really can't control, but there's a lot of society pressure to perceive that we do. And within that, I think is a lesson for us as a society, because if climate change is real, and I happen to believe in science, there are going to be more disruptions as the next decades come, and we collectively are going to have to learn how to harness the energy of this disruption and our common resources to sort of work towards the greater good. That's my very idealistic take on it.
It's nice to call it idealistic. Yeah. I'm going to ask Susan Abbott to talk about this setting of the stage with the four of you in a room, regardless of the mentor project or just the coming together.
Can I say, you know?
You sure can. All right, we'll leave it there. And Yvette, what do you think about this coming? Because there seems to be a pretty, I'm new to the region, as you know, there's a pretty tight artist community in Winnipeg, but the targeting, like the focus of this particular project, do you think that had something to do with this?
Well, I think the fact that the community, the artists in Winnipeg, I think we're known to work together and to be generous with each other's time and skill. And so if, as an artist, like as an artist with a disability, I need help putting this together. But I also understand that artists who are able-bodied also bring in other artists to assist them in completing projects or bringing projects to how they had envisioned. Because as artists, we can't know everything. We can't be perfect at all aspects of how to build an installation. And so if you can source out an artist who can help, there's no, I mean, that's just what we do. And in Winnipeg, it's just such a great community of artists. The artists that I worked with were all so generous and professional, and I had a great time with that. And I think that's why I enjoy mentoring other artists as well, because I feel like I can, like, that's what I can offer to someone else if they need help in something that I can offer. And so and it's kind of nice because that's what my whole project is about, is interdependence and dependence. So we're all working together to try and attain each other's goals together. Yeah.
Yeah. There's in that theme of interdependence, there is just this this is all just incredibly honest work. You know, there's nothing fluffy about any of this work, but the takeaway is really this kind of flower child sense of, you know, you can't do this alone, and you never were doing it alone, you know, to every single person. Once you get over, especially with a piggy, it's just awful, but it's amazing. She's squealing all over the place. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think most everybody that I know has a hard time asking for help.
Yeah.
Until they really need help, you know, until it becomes just really, really desperate. And then you realize people are happy to do it. It's almost the greatest act of friendship that you can do, is to ask somebody for help.
Sure.
Yeah. Because people want to.
Yeah, because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel productive. It makes you feel needed. It makes you feel like you're participating, right?
Mm-hmm. I will, as the cipher of the arts organization that you all were trying to crypt, I will say it's just been totally, I was saying this to Diane last night, that all of these, like, the technology was new for me, and just the entire installation, and coming you know, from organizations that I wasn't necessarily that familiar with, continuing to consider accessibility in my own arts organization was this extra step, and it made it so clear how much work there needs to be done. Right?
Even booking the hotel was a challenge, eh?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
But small things like our guest book, we built because it's usually on a plinth that's about 4 feet high. So we had this thing made so that our guest book would be accessible to people who, for various reasons, can't write above their shoulders. Yeah.
Often it's just a simple solution.
That's it. That's it. Just remembering. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did want to, in regards to Susan Lambert's essay written by Andrea, this idea that comes across in many of your works about kind of the ontological body versus the hunk of meat kind of body. So, Andrea, Susan, did you want to talk about that? The idea that the brain is separate from the mind, that you're like there's an object there that's
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrea?
Well, I guess we have to kind of go back to my beef with Rene Descartes and the establishment of the idea of dualism in the Enlightenment. It was that idea and the separation of human beings from the natural world that leads to imperialism. It leads to colonization. It leads to the expansion of Western European culture and subjugation of other cultures across the globe. And it's the reason that many indigenous cultures who were highly advanced in the sciences of pharmacology were wiped out before we could even know what benefits of their knowledge. And also their cultures were denigrated as inferior because of this sense of now you have some disembodied mind as well as a body. And I think that a lot of our social ills can be fundamentally traced back to that philosophical moment. And we now live as dualistic beings in our cultures. We separate our interior life and our thinking life from the real world in a way. And I think that that's a really fatal mistake. But culturally speaking, it's promoted everywhere, especially when you look at the ideals of like the European scientists who discovered all these things, when really they managed to read Arabic commentaries and Arabic studies, and they just stole those ideas from the long-standing Persian culture. And because they were white rich guys, they went, we discovered this. And we're now reaping the harvest that that was sown with those seeds. And it really, it comes down to, that is why there were residential schools. That is why in Canada today we have an ongoing genocide being fought against First Nations people and Inuit people that's being funded by Canadian taxpayers. And if we could somehow integrate our mind self with the fundamental animality of our bodies, I think that we would be better prepared to face the challenges of the future.
Yeah, that's environmental.
Definitely.
Climate, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely.
You can clap for real. Yeah, from the audience, still checking back in. No? I'm so proud of them for being here in person. You don't like to talk, but I want to ask you about your mental asylum, your manifesto. Can you talk about what you're working on there?
I got a residency a few years ago, and with my friend Yvette, who helped me write grants. Well, she wrote them, and I smiled. I got money to go down to Hamilton. And when I went there, I realized, I grew up in that area, and I realized that there was an old psychiatric building, Century Manor, that was still standing. It's one of the last ones that, in that area, they had a huge hospital, and it was the only left part of her. And so I went there with the notion that I'd do prints, or I wasn't really sure what I was doing. And then, of course, I got in my head and overwhelmed and just went out there with my camera, and I had made silicone masks of myself, manic and depressed, like kind of clown, whatever. And I brought these with me. And the moment I walked on the property, I was overcome. I fell in love with her. She's dilapidated and maybe my age, or she just represented me, and everything represents me in my work. So I brought these masks, and I just started taking photographs and listening to music from, the 60s. Like, I don't know, it just became this magical, really magical, very, very important place for me, where You know, everyone's kind of afraid of asylums or old hauntings and all that kind of stuff. But I have the deepest respect for just those grounds and the stories. You could feel it in the bones of her, and just everyone's voices and the trauma and everything that happened there. It was just I was humbled and just really honored to take her in. So I started doing photographs, and I did some paintings, and it's still a work in progress because she's still, at the moment, there's a chance that she might be torn down. So I have a feeling I'll probably make another trip down there to spend time with her. Yeah. And
So
you know,
it could probably go on.
sorry, there's just with mental, there is a museum there, and you can actually see the you know, the for lobotomies and the torture chambers with the cribs and stuff like that. So it's she's become a part of me where I can just examine just my history with mental illness and trauma.
It just, I was saying I hope so, because it seems like you could just, it would be endless, the amount of research that you could do there. Yeah, it'd be a shame. Yeah, I just want to also, you should burp? Did you do, baby? Did you do, baby? All right. I'm going to keep going with that line of questioning. And ask everybody kind of what they're working on a larger scale or for the future, what the plans are there. Do you want to go, Susan Lambert, since you're right here?
Sure. Yeah. As far as endless goes, you know, it's funny when you think about the body. You know, there is a finite amount of work that you can do when it comes to the body, but really it is endless. It's just, there's so much material there to do creatively. It's just when you're working with the muscles and the bones and the brain matter, the brain, oh my God, I will probably spend years working with just the brain itself. It's just amazing what happens and what goes on, and just all of the synapses and the nerve endings and just everything that's happening in there. I just recently was lucky enough to work with a neurologist for a little while, and the research that's going on with Alzheimer's, and you know, so, and I'm also interested in ageism and what's going on there, and how, you know, women's feminism, and how everything's you know, ageism and feminism and things like that. And it's just, there's just so much that you can get into. Some of it is so comical that, you know, I did a series on my mother's bridge club called the Lipstick Ladies, and that was one of my favorite series, was the big lips. And you know, the ladies they'll go outside in their tracksuits and their curlers, but they won't go outside without their lipstick on, you know. And just all sorts of, there's just everything. There's so much to do with the body, and it's infinite. I just love the fact that when you're talking about anything to do with just, and it doesn't have to be disability, it can be ability, you know. Anything to do with the body is, as far as I'm concerned, my forte.
Yeah. And you were one of the only participants who had worked with new media before, I believe.
With new media?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can say that when I was younger, in my old life, I was a computer analyst. And so, you know, it wasn't until I was around 40 years old or so that I decided I'd had enough with computers. And I went back to university, and I took fine arts. But this is in 1985, I was a computer programmer. And I was working on IBM mainframes with punch cards. Like that, here I am aging myself right now, but that's way back. And that's not really technology now. So that's why it was so good to go to this mentorship here at Video Pool, because it's nothing like it was before. The technology now is completely different. It has nothing to do with IBM mainframes or anything like that. Everything's different. Everything's changing. And I imagine like 20 years from now, it's going to be completely different again. I'm sure of it. And so, you know, if I'm still working around, I'll have to take another mentorship at Video Pool, I'm sure. So, yeah,
It's when you compare it to that kind of early, like the 80s computer technology, there's something about it that's so much more opaque. And there's something about it that's so much more translucent, right? If you can do these things because it's visual now, you don't have to know all of these, but there's no punch card. There's nothing physical kind of left, right? It's interesting.
I mean, this room here, this huge gallery, this would have been one computer, and it wouldn't have been a very big computer either. You know, it would have been a small little baby computer. Yeah.
Okay. I just keep walking in the same circle. But Andrea, so what are you working on?
Well, I am super excited because I am in pre-production for developing my newest performance work. So I am writing and talking with my creative team. And this is the piece where all of the new media technology that I learned about at Video Pool, I now have not only experts in the field fulfilling those functions, but I am, because this is the first piece that I have that's being supported by a company and an institution, and I'm not producing it myself as an independent artist. So there's money to pay people what they're worth. And it's going to be called Trigger Warning again, because all of them are trigger warning. And this lecture is going to start around the time of the Trojan War. And we're looking at the decline of Mycenaean culture and the goddess worshipping culture, and to the shift to patriarchal religions and societies. That's what we're going to start. And hopefully I will go through a discussion of hysteria and take us into the modern world and talk a little bit about mechanized and industrial violence. And at this point, I'm also hoping that's going to be kind of sexy, like kind of funny, but like a little bit sexy, a little bit dirty. And I'm just looking forward to going into rehearsals on the 10th. And the show will be at the Rachel Brown Theater in Winnipeg from October 28th till November 6th. So that's I'm really looking forward to just diving into a new project and getting some new research parameters. And as I said again, I have I'm so delighted that I have collaborators. It's less lonely.
Yeah. And you can count on people.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because you, especially you and I both research kind of obsessively, and you kind of forget what reality is when you go that deeply into a hole, right?
And the thing with performance is, as long as you're just thinking about it, it's only a narcissistic fantasy. And what I'm looking for in collaborators is that I sort of tell them the broad ideas that I'm looking for, and then their feedback to me, if it automatically makes the whole thing better, then you can just go, oh, okay, this is a good situation. We're on the same wavelength. And then I can just like free part of my brain for something else.
Yeah. Okay. Back over to Yvette. So I know that you're mentoring a lot, because I see you come up in all the newsletters. Is there? Well, you can talk about that. I love the idea of that.
I also have a bachelor. That's why I started out as a Bachelor of Education, and so I really like, working with others and being able to see where their strengths are and helping them realize their strengths. And so I'm doing some of that, and started working for MAWA a little bit and developing course material for visual arts classes and stuff like that. But I really, I just like being out in the community, and I think I'm like this project. I'm gonna push it a little further by making an animated video, which I need to like learn how to do. I started in the mentorship, but I didn't have the time to finish it. So I'm gonna work on finishing that because I would like to see the figure make cartwheels or handstands or ballet pirouette. So we'll see how much further I can push that, and just, yeah, I'm sure I'll come up with another idea someday. So, as needed, they come to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your previous, I think of your previous kind of oeuvre as being like really funny animal kind of grotesques.
Yeah, I'm very sarcastic in nature. That's the way I communicate, and so I think my work is also comes out as sarcastic. I like to use humor and to make people think, look twice, and think. So I think that's what I like about collage, because I can take things out of context and make new stories out of them, and then see if I can trick people in believing that story is a real story, and so I like playing with that.
Yeah. I think it's such a good reminder of the way that art. I'm just walking over here, not because I'm walking away from you, but because there might be a comment on the internet that I want to address before we say goodbye. But I love the idea of playing with truths in such a literal way when you're talking about art, because that's what art does. Is it communicates something that is true because it exists, because we've thought of it, and it kind of doesn't need that extra substance. It's about a concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so last chance from anybody online to comment and ask a question. A Facebook user wrote, I don't know, that's not a question. I'm not going to answer that one. And one last chance for the audience before we say goodbye, because we're coming right up on 2 o'clock. No? All right, so tomorrow at the AGSM, similar format. For people who are here in person and for people who are here online, we're going to have a panel discussion with Diane Drieger about cripping the arts. And I am so excited for that. So please join us then. And thank you very much to our interpreter. Thank you very much to the artists. Thank you very much to Anna behind the scenes. And thank you all for joining us. Have a great night. Afternoon. Bye.